Yeah, no problem. I'll mute myself now.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in our second Lunch and Learn seminar for the year on the topic of tactile paving at stations. So I'll get started now while people log in. So good afternoon. To introduce myself, I am Jenly Chu. I'm the Treasurer and Publicity Officer for the RCEA, and I will be presenting these slides before handing over to Steve McCormick. So to get some questions out of the way, first and foremost, this recording will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube page as soon as possible. And I will also distribute the presentation slides after the event. So you'll be seeing it in the next couple of days. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel on the top of the bar and to submit your questions. You can also use the chat, but it will be much neater if you use the Q&A panel. So I'd highly recommend that. And I will be fielding questions from Steve after the event for him to answer. So to quickly introduce ourselves, the RCEA was founded in 1921 to encourage the exchange of knowledge between railway civil engineers. And in 1997, we became part of the Institution of Civil Engineers. We work closely with other disciplines through the Railway Engineering Forum and the Young Rail Professionals. And currently we have over 400 members. Our main events is a series of monthly meetings in the evenings on the last Thursday of every month, say for July and August, held in 1 Great George Street in London and also across the UK. And we're now also branching out into doing these Lunch and Learn seminars as well. So our membership fees for the year have been frozen for the last few years, and they remain at £18.50 for ordinary members, £8.75 for young professional members, and £5.50 for retired members, and free for student members of the ICE. So we highly recommend that you join us and help us to put on this our series of events and to promote continuous CPD and exchange. And if you'd like to get involved in our committee, our next committee meeting is later this month on Thursday, the 25th of April at 11:30 to 12:30. It'll be held in person at the ICE at 1 Great George Street and online through Microsoft Teams. And this will then be followed by our annual conference at 1 to 4:30 on the day, and our annual general meeting from 5 to 6. So if you do want to join in on the committee, please email rcea@ice.org.uk for more details. And yeah, so today's event will be talking about tactile paving at stations, where the railway industry of Great Britain is required by law to provide people who are disabled equal service without discrimination. And this presentation will look at how different station schemes have proceeded with the provision of such tactile paving at stations. Our speaker is Steve McCormick, who is the chair of the RCEA, as well as being the lead discipline engineer for buildings and civils for the Trans-Pennine Route upgrade on behalf of Network Rail. Steve is a chartered engineer who has had 44 years experience in the industry, and of which 32 years experience are in the rail industry, and he has worked across many rail projects across the UK in his time. And then our future events, our next event after this will be our annual conference on the Thursday, the 25th of April, on decarbonization and other environmental challenges for major transport infrastructure projects, which will be held in person and online at the ICE headquarters at 1 Great George Street, London. Our buffet lunch is free for all members and is charged as £18.50 for non-members, which is the same as our annual membership fee. So we highly recommend people join us as members to not only enjoy a free lunch, but also to be part of our community and to help us put on our events. It will be introduced by Steve again, and then we'll have a series of 3 speakers from TfL, Expedition Engineering, and from the DFT. And also, we are publicizing the new Civil Engineers Rail and Transit Conference on Tuesday, the 4th of June at America Square in London. So this is part of the NCE's Transport Series of the Year, and they will delve into the pressing challenges and upcoming opportunities for the UK rail and transit sector. As a organization that is helping to publicize this event, RCEA members can get a 15% discount on the conference fees. And to do so, please go into the members area of the RCEA website to find access to the website and to the link, as well to get the discount code and to get information on how you can register to attend the conference. And now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Steve to present.
Thanks, Yanli. Right, firstly, I need to say that I am not an access specialist expert in any way. I did contact the technical authority at Network Rail to see if I could get the author of the new standard that's coming out, but unfortunately not available. The idea of this presentation is not really to tell you how to do it. It's just basically to share some of the experiences that I've had recently on the Transpennine route upgrade. Why have I chosen this subject? Well, to be honest, we've had one or two difficulties on TRU in terms of tactile paving at stations, and based on a little bit of research that we've done, there appears to be problems elsewhere. Next slide. So why do we need tactile paving services? Quite simply, it's a legal requirement. The Disability Discrimination Act of 1995, which was replaced by the Equality Act of 2010, it's unlawful for a service provider to discriminate against any people with disabilities. Next slide. So how are tactile surfaces used? The tactile paving surfaces convey information to people with impaired vision. Tactile surfaces are designed to be a hazard warning or to guide people along a clear route. The design of tactile surfaces should not be an afterthought, and the design of the tactile wayfinding may focus the mind on providing the best platform layout for people with disabilities or impaired vision. The design will also impact platform widths, drainage layouts, and positioning of station facilities and equipment on platforms. Next slide. So there's a number of standards that are available. On the slide, I've just shown a few. I've placed a warning note around the DFT design standard for accessible railway stations. The reason why I've done that is that that particular standard is woefully out of date. However, in a slightly different scenario covering uncovered footbridges, I did receive a letter from the DFT to say that by failing to comply with that code, an operator is in breach of their licence and may be subject to enforcement actions by the ORR. So even though the references in there to the British standards are out of date, you need to comply or to seek a derogation. The last one there that's shown on there, which is the Civ 300 Module 6, that particular standard is not available yet. It's currently out for stakeholder review, and the hope is that it gets issued in summer 2024. Next slide. Okay, so what types of tactile surfacing do we generally find on stations? Well, there's normally three types. There's the platform edge warning surface, the corduroy hazard warning surface, and the guidance path surface, which are generally known as tactile wayfinding. Next slide. So there's an example of platform edge warning surface. Next slide. So what do we need platform edge warning surfaces for? What do they look like and why do we need them? They generally have a blister type pattern and can be any colour apart from red. They convey the message of hazard, proceed with caution, and they are installed immediately behind the coper, but not less than 500 millimetres from the platform edge. Next slide. Do I need a yellow line as well as the platform edge tactile warning surface? What you need to do is to carry out an aerodynamic risk assessment, and there's a tool in the standard there which is listed, and that will determine whether a yellow line is required. If you come up with a low risk, in theory the yellow line isn't required. However, if you look at figure 6 there, they've got a nice yellow tactile surface which could almost sort of double up as a yellow line as well. If you have a high risk as a result, the yellow line is required, and you can see an example there in figure 6. Note of caution, do need to speak to the train operating companies with regards to the result of the assessment, in that they may require additional mitigation measures, for example, on stations where we've had low risk, and they've particularly asked for a yellow line to be put on there because they use it for train dispatch. Next slide. Do I need to install platform edge tactiles for platform extensions? Basically, the Network Rail standard is listed there. It is woefully out of date, but there is an update, a guidance note, which has recently been published, which is on the site, so you can have a look at that where it tries to update it. But in general, where the existing platform has a tactile surface, then yes, generally you should continue that tactile surface. Where the existing platform does not have an existing tactile surface, then generally no, unless there is reasonable opportunity. And I've tried to give some definition there as to what reasonable opportunity means. The thing to note also is that you still may need to put in for a derogation from the PRM NTSN in terms of platform extensions if you don't put the tactile wayfinding in, sorry, the tactile strip in. Next slide. So there's also talk of what's called the danger area. So what is the danger area? Within the PRM NTSN, it's stated as the area where passengers are not allowed to stand when trains are passing or arriving. The standard also states that the boundary of the danger area furthest from the rail side edge of the platform shall have a visual marking and tactile walking surface indicator. Now, if you look at the diagram there, you can potentially see a bit of a problem in that people with impaired vision could actually walk past the yellow line and walk into the danger area before they actually reach the tactile surface. This again is something that is known to the DFT. Next slide, please. Corduroy hazard warning surface. These are probably the easiest ones, and again there's an example there. Next slide. What do these look like and where are they used? They have a pattern of 8 raised bars which can be coloured, again apart from red, and they convey the message of hazard, proceed at risk, and they're generally used with steps. They're installed with the bars running transverse across the direction of pedestrian travel. Next slide. This is a sort of a typical layout of where they may be used. So again, they're located at the top and bottom of the stairs, and this includes footbridges as well. They start 400 millimeters from the top and the bottom steps. They extend for a width of 800 millimeters, and they extend 400 millimeters beyond the step width. Next slide. Guidance path surfaces, otherwise known as tactile wayfinding. Next slide. So again, what do we need these guidance path surfaces for, and what do they look like? Well, these have a pattern of 5 raised sort of lozenge-shaped tactile surfacing, which again can be any colour apart from red. The purpose of the guidance path surface is to guide people with impaired vision along a clear route. It's essential that the Building Environmental Accessibility Panel, BEAP, and local groups representing people with impaired vision and other people with disabilities are consulted when you're looking to design this type of surfacing. Next slide. How should these be used? Well, again, there's certain guidance in there. What you need to bear in mind is that every station is different, so there isn't a one size fits all. You need to have a specific design for each station. General guidance is that the surfacing is installed with the bars running in the direction of travel for people walking. The guidance path should be 800 millimeters wide. Guidance path should be kept as straight as possible, and the path should take people along a safe and 160 millimeter wide unobstructed routes. Next slide. There's a couple of examples there of what you do at 90-degree turns and T-junctions. Next slide. And again, another example of what you can do at crossroads. Next slide. At TRU, we did a little bit of research looking at some stations that have opened recently, and as you can see there are several stations whereby no tactile wayfinding has been installed. Next slide. So the first one you can see there is Perry Bar. If you look at the slide on the left, you'll probably struggle to see the actual tactile wayfinding. Again, it's not a very good example really, because there's colour contrast is quite difficult to pick that up. On both the outside the station and on the platform itself, they're 400 millimeters wide. And on the platform, the route of the tactile wayfinding runs along the platform to sort of key areas along the platform. Next slide. Next one we looked at was Reading Green Park Station. We've got a fairly narrow platform there with a 400 millimeter wide route of tactile wayfinding longitudinally along the platform. Again, there's potential issues there for wheelchair and pushchair users, and the ACO type drain appears to be potentially restricting the location for the tactile wayfinding, hence the sort of need to sort of not have tactile wayfinding as an afterthought. Next slide. Next station we looked at was Thanet Parkway. Again, a very narrow platform here. Again, a potential issue for wheelchair and pushchair users, and outside the platform tactile wayfind, it extends through to a crossing point on the highway. Next slide. So Marsh Barton Station. This one has got an 800 millimeter wide route of tactile wayfinding, again longitudinal to the platform and going to key locations. Again, in some areas there's a large proportion of the platform is taken up by tactile paving, and again, this could cause potential problems for wheelchair and pushchair users. Next slide. Portways Park and Ride. Again, this one is a 400mm wide route, longitudinal with a platform to key locations. It seems to be pushed over to the back of the platform, and I think that's probably due to the location of the manhole covers. But there it looks like there's a potential problem with you've not actually achieved a 1600mm wide unobstructed space, and you've got potential trip hazards as well along there. Next slide. This next one is actually quite an interesting approach at Reston. They've done something fairly different here, and they've got a very minimal use of tactiles. The approach that they use is quite similar to how tactiles are used in a high street environment. They've got 900mm wide tactile paving at 90 degrees to the copers to key areas. My only criticism for this particular design is that the tactile surfacing possibly starts too far away from the back of the coper and could potentially be missed. Next slide. So on Trans-Pennine Route upgrade, there's 3 stations that have recently opened. These are at Morley, Castleford, and Dawn and Totley. Next slide. At Morley Station, basically we're relocating the platforms to the east of the old station. We've increased the platform lengths for 6-car trains, and we've provided a level access to all the platforms via a new footbridge and through lifts. We've also done some reconfiguration of the car park and resurfaced the car park. Next slide. We consulted the local user groups, and we also presented to a wayfinding option to BEEP in December. I was quite surprised that BEEP actually advised TRU to seek a derogation from the PRM NTSN for Morley and for all TRU stations. They stated a couple of reasons in that one of the slides shows a little bit later that it doesn't take many people to be stood on the platform before the actual route is difficult to navigate. There was also a suggestion that there's actually a very high percentage of people with impaired vision are not actually trained to use tactile paving. The position on that one is that we've put the letter and the application in for that, and we're awaiting an outcome on that. Next slide. Castleford Station was demolition and reconstruction of the existing disused platform 2, and again providing a level access platform with new footbridge incorporating pedestrian lifts. Next slide. Letter and application was submitted based on the fact that there was no existing tactile wayfinding on platform 1. Retrospective installation of tactile wayfinding on platform 1 would have been outside the TRU scope and would have caused significant cost, delays and disruption. Installation of tactile wayfinding on platform 2 would cause confusion, and we received a derogation from the PRM NTSN from the DFT on that particular station. Next slide. The more recent station that's opened, which opened last week or the week before, Dawn and Totley. We've basically extended platform 1 which is on the top side there, from 4 to 6 car length. And on the south side there, we've constructed a new 6 car length platform. We also provided step-free access by providing a new footbridge, stairs and lift, which is located centrally to the station. Tactile wayfinding was developed following consultation with the local accessibility working group, who endorsed the final layout. Next slide. If you can see there on the right hand side, what I was saying is that it doesn't take that many people on the platform for the guidance route to be difficult to navigate. Next slide. So, in summary, there's quite a bit of inconsistency in what we've seen in the examples there. Platform widths and maintaining a 1600 metre wide clear route has been difficult, and several stations have not installed tactile wayfinding. Also seems to be a bit of inconsistency to the extent of the guided path and what are deemed to be key areas or locations. And again, apart from Reston, they've generally followed the same pattern, with the routes being parallel to the track. Next slide. The DFT have recognised that there are problems with the standard in connection with tactile wayfinding and the danger area. However, the DFT have advised that this is a matter for each project to determine how they're to proceed and secure authorisation and comply with the requirements of PRM NTSN. Next slide. So in terms of recommendations, the first thing is basically you have to undertake consultation with access consultants, wayfinding specialists, the train operating companies, local access groups, BEEP, when you're developing a tactile wayfinding design, and you need to get agreements from all parties in terms of the layout. Basically, there are two options from what I can see. One is you can apply to the DFT to disapply the PRM NTS regarding tactile wayfinding requirements, or you can actually undertake a design which complies to the requirements of the PRM NTSN. Please note that letters and applications need to be specific to a station and cannot be grouped. We can't group all the TRU stations into one letter and application. They need to be individual. Next slide. A couple of things that we've learned. Submissions to the DFT need to be at the earliest opportunity and can typically take approximately 6 months to process. Applications to disapply to PRM MTS requirements need to be supported by the consulted groups. The other thing is to note is there's no guarantee that the application will be successful, and the DFT may request additional or alternative measures. Need to identify the key features that the tactile wayfinding needs to guide people with visual impairment, and something that you just do not ignore. It's not a problem that's going to go away. If you ignore it, you run the risk of railway assurance and certification, and final handback could be in jeopardy. The other thing as well is don't wait and assume that the standards will be updated in a timely manner and your problem will go away. Next slide. So going forward, there's a new standard, CIV 300 Module 6. tactile wayfinding. As I say, that's currently out to stakeholder review, and hopefully that will be issued in the summer of this year, and that will hopefully answer all our questions. The other alternatives are new technology, technology such as the technology that's trialled at Bristol Temple Meads, and GPS navigation systems that have been trialled around the country. An alternative solution that has been put forward for Morley is the installation of the Royal National Institution for Blind map for all, and there's a picture of one there which is located at Dewsbury. But what you need to be careful with these maps is the location of them needs careful consideration, and also the maps will need to be updated for any changes to the station layout. Next slide. I'd like to say a special thank you to James Jarman. James was a work experience student who did the initial research into how tactile paving been installed in recently opened station, and some of his material has found its way into this presentation. Next slide. And questions? Has anybody got any questions?
There's quite a lot of questions that have turned up in the live session Q&A. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be first publishing them in order of how they were, in order of the time that they were sent in.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, first things first. I want one question is, yes, the slides will be shared with the attendees of this meeting, as well as the recording will be put onto YouTube. And I got also one from Evilasio saying, Steve, many thanks for the presentation. So I won't be publishing those. So for the published ones, what I'll say first is, there's a question here from Frank Anatole. Due to demand, NRG INCIV 300/06 will be uploaded to the standard sites for company review in a due course, likely in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks, Frank.
And the next one will be from Ali Saeed at Network Rail. How does the T or a cross arrangement in the tactile wayfinding, how can it help a blind or partially sighted person find their way?
From what I've seen, there's various examples. From what I've seen, there is just in advance they tend to change the pattern around to let you know that you're coming to a decision point. Again, I've seen various alternatives whereby they've almost put like a blister pattern in the middle to show that you're at a decision point. Again, somebody needs to make a decision as to, well, as to what is the key route, and there are ways you can actually lay the tactile paving to actually show which is the, if you like, the predominant route. As I say, the examples that are there are taken from the DFT guidance document, but yeah, there is still a few holes in terms of how we do that. And again, I'm hoping that may become clearer in the new Network Rail guidance document.
The next question, thank you very much, Stephen. Next question from Evilasio Silva Jr. at NR. It would be nice if you could share recommendations for situations where tactile paving is installed, but causing a problem for wheelchair users. Is
that a question or is it a statement?
His question was, how would you recommend? What would you recommend in those situations?
It's quite difficult because on some of the examples that we've got there, we're dealing with fairly narrow platforms, and in all honesty, where we've got narrow platforms, my recommendation is that you actually potentially seek a derogation to not install them. If we're looking seriously at installing these, we need to potentially look at increasing the platform widths to make these work. Again, I can't stress the fact that these shouldn't be treated as an afterthought. We need to be thinking about this early stages of the design. The layout of this will have an impact on, you know, the station, where you're putting your drainage runs, where your lighting columns are, where perhaps your waiting shelters are going. Really need to think about this early on, and if we get that right, we can get the rest of the station, and we can get the station working better for people with impaired vision and people with disabilities as well.
Thank you, Steve. The next question is question on the example stations. Reston did not have compliant lengths, and all others, apart from Marsh Barton, had too narrow wayfinding. It would appear that the designer at Marsh Barton did a very good job at compliance. If properly considered during design, is it really that difficult to produce a compliant design?
I would say that the difficulties that we have in a lot of our platforms is the platform widths. If you go by the 800mm wide and the 1600 clear width, you need, again, space at the back of the existing tactile paving at the back of the copers. You can very quickly, if you're not careful, fill your platform up with tactile paving. I have to say, when we went to Beep, we actually went with a design for tactile wayfinding, and I was very surprised when Beep came back and said, we recommend you don't install it. So yeah, the guidance is there, but it seems to be difficult to tick all the boxes when you've got stations which are potentially landlocked, or, you know, we potentially need to buy maybe more land to increase the platform widths.
Thank you, Steve. Next question would be, what is your experience of decision points? When to use them? Are they required at turns and lift entrances, etc.?
Very little experience on decision points, only from what I've seen. From what I've seen, there doesn't seem to be a standard approach. Different approaches have been used. I've seen some whereby they've actually chamfered the actual. They've sort of like cut the tactile at 45, you know, through, and then sort of try to guide people around. Again, it's a particular area which does need some attention.
Thank you, Steve. Next one from Lizzie. Do you know how much the visual impairment board maps cost? I've recently seen one outside the assisted travel lounge at Manchester Piccadilly. Something to consider in pricing for future projects or new stations. Is this something that NR and sponsors will be priced in, or is it mainly led by talks?
Right. Okay. I don't know what they are, what they cost. I know there are 4 located in Manchester Piccadilly. They're mainly at the entrances. There's one at Wakefield. There are several at York. It's something that seems to have been a fairly recent development. And again, it's something that we've been advised that we should, if we're not putting tactile wayfinding in at Morley, then we should be actually installing one of these maps. There is within the link there, there's a guide to a document about these particular maps, but also as well about other ways of getting information across to visually impaired people.
Thank you. Next one from, it says, it was mentioned that a high percentage of visually impaired people are not trained in the use of tactile wayfinding. What is being done with stakeholders to proactively engage them to create consistent understanding of how to interpret such wayfinding?
Oh, that's a difficult one. The figure that was quoted was 95%. Whether or not that's accurate or not, I couldn't say. But other people have given a figure in the 90s. I don't know. Is it down to the Network Rail and the train operating companies to provide the training for this? I don't think so. Could you read that question again, please?
It was mentioned that a high percentage of visually impaired people are not trained in the use of tactile wayfinding. What work is being done in this space to proactively engage with stakeholders to create an understanding of how to interpret it?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I don't know. Is Frank on the line? Are you able to answer that, Frank?
Well, the thing is that if he's on the line, it's a live event, so he can't chip in.
Okay.
Only presenters can present.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's something worth discussing. Yeah.
What I'll do is, if you put that in send that through to me, I'll try and make some inquiries and get a response back to that.
Sure thing, Steve. The next one from Dermot is quite a similar one, so I think we need to answer it now. But Dermot said, Beat does not want tactile wayfinding and Morley. Surely, if not installed, people will never become familiar with them. But I'll send it over to you as well. The next one is, would you recommend providing wayfinding tactiles to the tops and bottoms of steps or only to lifts?
The key points that seem to are the major ones, which are common to all of them, seems to be the stairs, lifts, waiting rooms. Now, whether or not you go to all the waiting rooms, or the waiting shelters, I should say, or whether you just go to the first one. The other ones, again, which are potentially common ones, are ticket machines and to help points as well. But they seem to be the sort of the key areas where they're directed to. Okay,
there's one here from Peter Bennett. Historically, the PRM NTSN did not require guidance paths to being installed with the guidance issued in 2015, referencing ISO 23599, which states TWSIs shall be installed where no built or natural guidance elements can be provided. However, this guidance seems to have been lost since moving to PRM NTSN. So I was curious if any standard challenge has challenged the recent interpretation of the NTSN, making reference to previous guidance issued in the PRM TSI.
My understanding is that the PRM standard, PRM NTSN, has been challenged, and at this present time, I think as a result of that challenge, the letter came out to sort of confirm that they are aware that there are problems with the standard. I understand they're having another look at that particular standard, and any changes that may be made to that standard, I think have been anticipated in the new Civ 300 Module 6, which is coming out. So yeah, let's wait for that standard to come out, and then hopefully that will agree with any future alterations to the PRM NTSN.
The next one isn't a question, but it's a statement from Carol Stitchman, who says, if anyone would like any assistance for tactile station design, Carol Stitchman, is happy to help and advise. Carol is preparing for her Stage 2 National Register of Access Consultants accreditation. Thank you very much, Carol. Well, so we're coming, it's now 14 past 1, and we're only scheduled until 13:20, and we have a lot in the chain. So I'll just go through whatever, a few more of the questions there. So one from Joe Biceno. Will the new standard help support when a derogation is applied for, or will this be something the DFT make without particular guidance? I have had previous projects where we were supported by BEAP to apply, and a DFT refused, and wayfinding had to be provided on what was quite a narrow platform.
Well, I can't really comment on the new platform. Sorry, the new standard. I've not been involved in terms of the stakeholder review group on that one. But yeah, we'll have to wait to see. That's, as I say, will be coming out very soon. Yeah, that's one thing I actually said. You put the application in, you cannot guarantee that your application is going to be successful. Our application at Castleford was successful. We're still waiting the outcome on Morley. The soundings that we've had is that in general they're happy with it, but they want to know what the timescales are for putting one of the maps for all in. So it looks like we're potentially going to have to install that at Morley, potentially other stations as well along the TRU route.
Okay, I got one here from, so quickly we'll go through the questions from Ali, and the last two questions are published, and then I'll just quickly go through some of the messages in the Q&A, which hasn't been published yet, from Frank, which will be information. So Ali asks, for one of the examples shared for a new station with plinths included at the base of the lampposts, why are these there? Aren't they trip hazards?
Well, yeah, they are. They're probably there to maybe cover up the holding down bolts of the lighting columns. Maybe, I don't know, which are potentially trip hazards themselves, if that's the way, depending on how they fix the lighting columns, because you can either set them in or you can actually put holding down bolts, and yeah, they are tripping points. And the position of that tactile wayfinding is not good in connection in when you look at the location of them lighting columns.
And the final question, which I will cover, is BAP feedback is often to not include tactile wayfinding, contrary to the NTSN requirement. Any idea on how the new standard will take into account?
I don't know yet. I think we'll just have to wait and see what comes out in terms of the new NR standard that's coming out and the potential changes to the PRM NTSN. They're aware there's a problem, and unfortunately the letter is not particularly helpful. It identifies what the problems are, but it basically seems to throw the problem back at the projects and say, well, it's up to you to sort it out. So yeah, I don't think the current position can be maintained. Something's going to have to happen, because quite rightly, something that which on paper seems to be fairly simple is causing problems.
Okay, so that will be the last question we'll cover now. What I think I'm going to do is that I'm going to compile the full list of questions, published and unpublished, send it over to you, and you can send it over to the relevant experts for answering them, and then I will then endeavor to get them distributed out to the attendees of this call. So, but before we end, I think we have 3 messages from Frank, who says the NR guidance will be open source and therefore available to a wide range of stakeholders and the general public. It will contain detailed info on the different tactile paths. And it is worth pointing out that the DFT and RSSB have been part of the working group for this new standard, and that a briefing video for CIV 306 will also be widely circulated. So this will answer a lot of the questions that people will have with regards to tactile paving and wayfinding. So yes, thank you everyone very much for your attendance at this Lunch and Learn seminar, and I hope that it was of use to you. And what I will then going forward is I will then endeavor to download the recording, upload it to our YouTube page, and then we'll distribute out the slides and the links to the recording in an email to all the attendees of the seminar. And of course, you are very welcome to share it if anyone was interested. And what I'll then do is I'll compile all of these questions and then get them sent to the relevant experts within NR and in tactile paving, and we will then endeavor to get them sent out to the attendees as soon as possible. Well, have a good afternoon, everyone, and have a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.